Hi everyone, Amy here checking in for week 9. I cannot believe it, but we are so close to the end. But I want to start just by looking a little bit backward at our previous unit for the summary and response essay. I did get these assignments graded and back to you this week. And for the most part, they did range from very, very strong to those that were still definitely struggling. But there were definitely a couple of things that I saw coming up, issues that I want to address here. So I'm just going to pull up the rubric quickly and show you again what I was grading you on. So of course you have your summary and you have your response. Those are the two primary components of the essay, and for further detail you can of course look up higher on the assignment sheet and you'll see that the summary should be about a third of the overall essay. That's here in the strategies, and the response should be about 2/3 of the overall essay. So one of the things that I saw, especially in this category, and this bled into the organization too, was that about half of you, even though you were maybe summarizing and responding to the article very well, blended those two items together, and that becomes challenging because it's difficult to tell if you really know how to separate the two, if your summary is truly objective, for example, or if in your response you might be appropriating some of the author's ideas and taking them on as your own without really giving them appropriate credit. So as we talked about all throughout the unit, I did want to see that summary right up front in its own section at the beginning, right after your intro paragraph. And then a separate response thesis pulled out in its own paragraph, its own short transitional paragraph, as a way to kind of bridge the summary and the body of your response, which then takes that thesis from your response thesis there and breaks down the points that you've made in order in individual paragraphs, followed by a conclusion at the end. So again, about half of you blended those together. It wasn't really clear where your distinct summary and response was, and so that becomes problematic in as much as I can't tell if your summary is truly objective. It's not separate on its own from those response points, which are subjective, so that kind of violated that rule of objectivity in some of those essays. And then likewise, if you are summarizing in your response paragraph, it can come across as not really extending the discussion enough or not thinking critically enough, because you're really just repeating what the writer has said. So you want to pull that summary into its own section again at the beginning. So several of you may have gotten comments in that kind of general area. And then the other thing that I was really having to take off a lot of points for were both a lack of author tags. So some of you just weren't giving us enough author tags to be able to tell the difference between your ideas and the writer's ideas, or maybe you were agreeing with the writer a lot but not giving them credit, so it sounded like you were trying to take on their ideas as your own and that kind of thing. But even more concerning than that was over here in the conventions column, about half of you failed to attach your works cited. So that is a major omission. That is actually a case of academic dishonesty or plagiarism, and if we weren't in a class where we're learning these things and I'm trying to teach you, your teachers might fail you for the class or the assignment, or you could even end up facing some consequences at the college level as well. So it's not just, oops, that was an okay accident. It's actually a crime and something that the academic world takes very seriously. So if you're going to live in this world or work in this world for your academic career, you kind of got to play by those rules a little bit. So I know this is our first essay where we've worked with an outside source. So on the narrative essay, this wasn't even an issue because you didn't have any outside sources. But on the iSearch essay, of course, it's all about research. It's all about those sources that you find. So if you don't document them properly, it's really going to be a major problem for your ability to pass that assignment. So let this be your red flag. If you were one of those people, a wake-up call. Hopefully don't ever forget your works cited or your bibliography again, because you'll be guilty of academic dishonesty. Okay, if you have any other questions about your grade on the assignment, or you don't understand where it came from or what I was talking about, again, I'm always happy to discuss those further with you, so please email me if that's the case. I also want to look back at the week 8 quiz, which was over apostrophes. Apostrophes are interesting. They're kind of one of those things in grammar that you have to memorize. I know I say that a lot, but not everything is that way. So with apostrophes, there's not quite as many exceptions to the rules as you might find in other areas of grammar and punctuation. So I think in some ways they can be the easiest once you really understand them and get it all figured out and memorized. So, you know, you did pretty well on this quiz. The class average was a 85 or 84, so that's pretty high. And then some of these questions you just rocked, but there were a few here that were consistently missed. And I noticed a theme coming up where the ones that you were scoring lower on had to do with the difference between plural possessives and singular possessives, and how do you use the apostrophe appropriately to show possession depending on whether your subject is single or plural. So we're going to start with looking at question 5. This was an example of a plural possessive sentence, or excuse me, instance of using an apostrophe, and it's saying what's wrong with the following. So it says the student's entrance is on the B level of the building. So it's implying that something is wrong with it. So you know it's not correct. So you need to figure out, do I need apostrophe at the end of entrance? Is it fine? Should it go after the S, or should there be no apostrophe whatsoever? So in this case, you can make a reasonable assumption based on the way the sentence is structured that it is an entrance for multiple students, because I don't know where you went to high school, but most schools don't have a separate entrance for each individual student. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that students is plural here. It's difficult to tell because we can't look at the apostrophe, but we know there is an S there. And since the rest of the sentence logically would make sense that it's referring to more than one student entering through this entrance, you can assume that that word is plural. And if we have a plural regular word, regular noun, that is, the reason I say regular is it becomes plural by adding an S. It's not like geese or deer or some weird word like that, usually animals for some reason. As long as you make it plural by adding an S at the end, then you would put an apostrophe after the S for any subject that is plural but also trying to show possession. So the entrance is for the students, it's belonging to them, so to speak. It's more than one student, so the apostrophe is going to go after the S, and C is appropriate. A is not right because this wouldn't make any sense. Entrance is not possessive. B is not right because there is an error here. And then D is not right either because there's possession being showed. Like I said before, it's this entrance of the students or for the students, therefore it is theirs. Question 8 was kind of a blend of both issues, plural possession and singular possession. So again, you have to figure out which noun in the sentence is doing the possessing. So it says, my father's pasta recipe is my family's treasure. So we have two things that are showing possession here. The family possesses the treasure, the father possesses the pasta. So I just want to point out here, we have an irregular noun, family. You don't just add an S to the end of family to make it plural, you have to make it an IES, which is why it's irregular, unlike the example we saw just a second ago. So let's look at the first one, my father's pasta. Do most people have more than one father? Not often. So in this case, we're going to say logically, we can assume that father is singular. It's just one dad. So I'm going to look at this and say, okay, the apostrophe S is correct because when it's a singular word, the apostrophe comes before the S. Next, we have this example, family's treasure. So how many people have more than one family? A lot of people, okay? I'm not trying to knock anybody's family structure. But this individual referring to their family actually is going to be singular. So I don't mean my families, all of them. I mean my particular family treasures this recipe. So this is actually singular, which means there's an error here. It should be family because it's not families, it's just one family. However, it is possessive, so we are going to add an S at the end. It's just a question of where and how do we do that. So it is not correct because families is plural, not possessive. There's no apostrophe here, so we know it's not possessive, but it should be possessive because it's their treasure. Sorry I'm talking in circles here, but it makes sense forward and it makes sense backwards. So it should be family singular apostrophe S to show the possession of that treasured recipe. All right, if you have questions about that, let me know. And then question 10 is a case of singular possession, so kind of the opposite of the first example, question 5, but incorporating some of what we just saw in question 8. So the following sentence is correct, true or false. A man's best friend isn't a dog, it's a cat. So we do have an appropriate use of a semicolon here. That's nice. This one actually has a cheat sheet for us because there's a pronoun. So I can look at this pronoun a and know right off the bat that my noun is singular. So we have a man, just one. Also, I know it would be changed to men if it was plural because man is an irregular noun. So a man's best friend isn't a dog, it's a cat. So we know that man is singular here. So what do you do with a singular noun if you want to make it possessive? You just add apostrophe s at the end. So this is not plural. We don't have to do anything weird with the apostrophe. It's just a completely normal use of an apostrophe s. But here the apostrophe is coming after the s, so there's an error. We know that it's not correct. It is false. Okay, so again, apostrophes are just one of those things that you have to memorize. So if you have questions about any of those rules, don't hesitate to contact me. I can explain them further, provide more examples, and that kind of thing. So I want to talk specifically about research because that is such a paramount skill for this unit in the iSearch essay. I am going to bring into this my discussion of your week 9 discussion that's going on right now, but I also want to tie it into your week 8 discussion from the Coach's Corner about comparing library searches because there were a couple of really insightful things that came up there that I didn't want you all to miss. So one thing is David's post here kind of came toward the end, so if you didn't get a chance to see it, please do go back and take a look. But David makes a really good point here about how you can use the tools that are already embedded in the database to your advantage to come up with better and more productive keywords, search terms, and then ultimately better results. So David says here, I did the advanced search and got better results specifically when I added .edu. Also, when I search Scholar search on Google, I get more precision on my search for what I'm looking for. Later, I changed up my advanced search to be more focused and specific, cognition and memory, and excluded .edu. I noticed a good result of non-course applications. I went on to Master File Premier, which I found better results, in my opinion. I found one piece that was really interesting but didn't have much on the topic, and when I used the smart text on the side, I found a wide variety involving the topic I'm looking for. I have found this over and over, semester after semester, in my own academic career, when I was in grad school, as well as a professor, and using that smart text is absolutely the #1 way to make those databases work for you and to get the most out of them. You know, use them to your advantage. So let me show you this, exactly what I'm talking about. Smart text, those are the keywords that are suggested to you by the database itself. Those are the ones that the database is looking at the keywords that you put in, being smart, which is why it's called smart text, and trying to guess what you're actually talking about. So as novice researchers, we don't always know exactly what the insider language is that people in that industry use to publish information about their field. So the database does that for us. So maybe I want to put in David's topic here, memory and cognition and college students. I'm going to cheat and put 2 words in that last example there. I've already got a couple of things limiting my results here. I want full text. I'm also going to check this peer-reviewed box because I'd like to make sure I have sources that are academic and scholarly. That's the benefit of the databases because you don't have to pay for them here like you would on an advanced Google search. But then I'm going to come down, look, I've already got 23. You know, that's pretty limited, but given that some of these are pretty complex, I'm probably not going to read 23 articles. So I'm going to look at these subject terms. Cognition is a term that I had put in. Memory is another one. So these are mine. I'm not sure what descriptive statistics would have to do with this. Task performance, on the other hand, is something that wouldn't have occurred to me to put in. But let's see what it comes up with when I check that as one of my filters. So this is going a lot more into, I think, the memory side of things and how our brains work. Task performance is, I think, one of the methods that they use to gauge how well your memory is working. And so these are going to be all a specific type of study related to that, but look, there's only 6 here. Let me try it with a different example, since David's already got a pretty refined topic to begin with. David, yours is already so good, it's kind of not making a good example for me. But maybe I want to do college, tuition, and free. I know some of you are doing that topic. So I'm going to search here. We'll see what it did with my filters on the left-hand side real quick. So we do have peer-reviewed remaining. So here, only 8 results. That's pretty good too, and it didn't suggest any subject terms. Okay, let me just do one that I know will work, because I need a good example. You guys have great topics, so it's kind of like hard here. Let's do marijuana, recreational, and legalization. Lots of synonyms that I'm missing here with these 3 words. So maybe I don't know other words for marijuana, but I can come down here to my subject smart text, and it's got cannabis. Maybe I didn't know that marijuana was also called cannabis. Then I could check on that, and it would limit my results to sources that are actually talking about the legal sources related to marijuana, because all the legal sources are going to be referring to it as cannabis. And then I can go back if I decide, you know, this isn't exactly what I wanted. If I just want government policy sources, if I want things related to the actual legislation, maybe I didn't know it was called the Controlled Substances Act, it's suggesting that to me here. So that's what David's talking about. I know I'm getting just a little bit off track, but I do want to go back to his post and show you that David is absolutely right when he's saying that that smart text tool is beneficial. It is the #1 tool that you can use for your research, in my opinion. Deborah, our success coach, also had a really good suggestion here on Gray's thread. In reply to his post, she says, as I look for research, sometimes it also helps me find possible sources and even other search words if I pay attention to the works cited or reference list at the end of the article itself. This is a great cheat sheet kind of way to find more sources. If you have a really good source, just look at that sources, and you can use those as well. And then you can also gauge some of those, again, industry-specific terms or language you might not have been familiar with, things to put into your keyword searches that'll help refine your results just a little bit more. So I do want to jump into our week 9 discussion, because week 9 is asking you to plan your essay. It's really saying, you know, the nitty-gritty of what information are you going to organize into each of your body paragraphs, because you'll need that as we get closer to writing those rough drafts. I'm going to talk a little bit first about your introduction and conclusion paragraphs for the essay, because a lot of the questions I'm asking you here are going to fall into those kind of framing paragraphs, and then the stuff in the planning document really lays out your body paragraphs and the information that is going to go into each of those. So I really want you to start with the foundation of that research question, because all of the prompts that I have here for you are focused on your process of inquiry, of inquiring or asking that question that is complex and interesting and important, and how you're going to go about answering it. That's what we call inquiry. You'll hear about that again when you get to English 121. And an inquiry process is a lot more in-depth than just saying, I'm going to research this topic. It involves, again, asking a question that meets all these criteria, but it also involves thinking about what your background knowledge is, what did you know before you did the research, what were some of your biases, how can you overcome those biases and conduct an inquiry that is actually open-minded and invites all different information instead of excluding, some of the information just right off the bat by the way you phrase the question and that kind of thing. And it also involves some reflection at the end, saying, well, what did I find out here? And maybe what didn't I find out? Or what was left unanswered? Or where is there to go from here? What else would I research at this point? And that's, again, what all these questions are asking you. So this definitely came up in everyone's post. Everybody did that part of the assignment, but Megan's I thought specifically was a good example of things that you could pull right into your introduction and right into your conclusion. So it would obviously need a little bit more development, but everything basically that she has here in this first part is going to be very appropriate for her to use in her intro paragraph of the essay. So already some pre-writing done here, and then these last couple of sentences about what she actually found out, those could be pulled right into the conclusion. And again, this is something everybody did. So I'm singling out Megan here, but everybody did a really good job with this. So look at your post and say, okay, what stuff in here needs to go into my intro? That can be pre-writing for your rough draft, and what needs to go into my conclusion? That can be pre-writing for your rough draft as well. The only thing I want to say is that your research question should come at the end of the introduction, not at the beginning. So that's just kind of my disclaimer there. So the other thing that the iSearch planning document, as I mentioned, is asking you to do is think about where are your, what are your body paragraphs going to focus on, and what information is going to go into each of those. And for the most part, I think you guys are off to a great start with this. Almost all of you did a pretty good job, but there were still a couple of places where I think, oh, well, this person's maybe combining two things in one, or this is too specific. So I noticed it in Jonathan's post. Jonathan, you're off to a pretty good start here with this first one, that the topic is deeply rooted in politics. That's definitely something that you could look across all of your sources and say, okay, what is a common theme here? That's what we're looking for these body paragraphs, the points you're making and introducing in the topic sentences. On the other hand, this one down here, that in Washington, D.C., school choice vouchers have led to a 19% increase in college enrollment for inner city students enrolled in the private school choice program. That's information from one of your sources. That's a little bit too specific to focus an entire paragraph around. That might be the information, the detailed information that you pull into the paragraph, but that's not the focus of the paragraph itself. The topic sentence for the paragraph might be something like, voucher programs help students improve their chances of going to college. And that's broad enough that you could then look across your research again and say, okay, I have a couple of different sources that touched on that, and bring in information from different sources. I do want to point out that Megan had some pretty good points to structure her paragraph. So did Jessica and Gray. So if you're looking for examples of how to do that, those were some good ones. But then I want to come back to that last thing I was just saying about how the assignment sheet spells out that you should be including information from more than one source in each paragraph. So I'll show you that in just a minute. But one person that I thought did a really good job with this was Kendall. She's really the only one that did this. So if you're not Kendall, I'm just going to tell you now, this needs some more attention in your draft. So this is her second page of the planning document. She's got a point listed at the bottom of the previous page, but it says what outside sources will use to support this finding, and she's got information from Abigail Hess here, one of her sources, and she's got information from U.S. News and World Report here, another source, and it's actually color-coded, which is awesome. So I love this because now she can go write the paragraph and bring in information from multiple sources, and it's doing what we call synthesis, or blending information toward a new answer. And so this is going to make for a really well-developed paragraph, and that's what everyone else should be doing. Again, if you're not Kendall, then this is something that you need to go back and look at, because she was really the only one that did that correctly. A lot of you were also talking about the different criteria that you were using to select your sources, which is awesome. That's another requirement according to the assignment sheet. I wanted to bring up Leslie's post because she was one of the people that touched on it directly, not the only one, but she talked about using the CRAP test in her planning document. So that is the credibility, reliability, accountability, authority, and then I think it's proximity or something like that. how close are they to the subject matter, that kind of thing. So here she's talking about that and how she determined the author's credentials for the sources that she was including. Leslie, I'd like you to be a little more specific than this in your actual paper. So what criteria from the CRAP test did the source meet? So you might say it was very authoritative. It really had all the information in there. Or it's very reliable. I found the information backed up in multiple sources. Or the credibility was great because they were attending to multiple points of view and not being biased, and they had a ton of good sources. Just give me some actual examples of which criteria you're talking about rather than the entire set of criteria as a whole. Jessica was another person that talked about this really in depth. Jessica, I think the stuff that you have in here about credibility definitely needs to go into your essay. So in her, let's see, I don't think it was here in the paragraph. It was actually in the planning document. So she's talking about why each of these sources are credible. You can see that, let's see, page 2. So she says the author's Kathleen Nadeau. Here's her credentials, blah, blah, blah. Lots of credentials here, going kind of on and on about that. Not so much with the second source or the third source, but really just that first one I thought was really in depth. That's definitely what I'm looking for. Let's see. Anything else? Oh, the sources that I'm using are very credible. One is actually a clinically research director who has her PhD in psychology and has been studying ADHD for the past 30 years. So again, that's the level of analysis that I'd like to see for all of your sources, not just that one, but Jessica, it's still a really good example. And then just the last thing I want to say about this particular discussion is that you guys are all doing really awesome with the discussion this week, especially in your comments. I don't think I saw a single comment this so far that I didn't think, wow, that was awesome. But you can be using those comments to try to come up with the points for your body paragraphs because your classmates are reading what you've written and they're saying, oh, wow, here's something to think about. So they're looking across all the information you've provided and helping you identify those themes or those ideas that keep bubbling to the surface. So listen to what each other are saying in your comments to one another and look at those. Like if you're still trying to think about what your body paragraph points are going to be, you can look at those for some ideas. All right, the next thing I want to do is just check in with where we are in the assignment sheet itself. This is a very, very short unit. We're coming up quickly on the end of the semester, and so I just want to make sure we all know where we are. So you've definitely already planned your inquiry, selected your topic. We've already talked about this. This audience analysis part is part of the inquiry. So just being able to think about where intellectual reader and academic reader would be interested in your topic and how to go about approaching the information you find open-mindedly, as I was talking about before. Conducting research, you do need to turn in your annotations for your advanced Google search this week, and then your scholarly database source next week, but I think most of you have practiced at least with all 3 of the types of sources at this point, and now you're starting to present your findings. You just have the framework right now through the iSearch planning document, which of course isn't in paragraph form, but you are starting to identify those main points and ideas. Again, analyzing the credentials as we were just talking about, and here's where it says you need to make sure you have a minimum of 2 sources in each body paragraph. You're even getting to step 5 toward the end of that planning document, and with some of the questions I'm asking you in other places about where you think you stand. Of course, if you're not finished with your research, you're not going to know how you answer the research question completely yet, but as you're getting close to that point, you should be solidifying in your mind what you think your overall answer is going to be. And then, as I said before in the conclusion, you also want to talk about, maybe what you didn't find an answer to, or where is there still to go with this? What can you do beyond just what you've done so far? And again, the strategies always line up in chronological order with everything I just showed you in the steps. So some of this you've already done just by choosing your topic and beginning your research. I'm asking you to find different kinds of sources and you are evaluating them. That's the analysis of the credibility, the CRAP criteria, and that kind of thing that I was just talking about. You're determining those main points for your body paragraphs, bringing in information from at least 2 sources, answering your research question in the conclusion with a position that you think is fair and well informed. And again, just going back to that open-minded inquiry process the whole way through. And then then you can start to kind of think about these criteria. As you begin drafting, make sure you're aware of where you're going to be. If you're struggling to identify 3 separate points for your body paragraphs, that's going to put you definitely out of the A range and things like that. So it's important to be aware of what all those criteria are as you are actually drafting the essay itself. All right, so let me go back here, and the last thing I'm going to talk about is, of course, just your weekend homework, which mostly involves preparing for your rough draft of the essay, which is due next week. So we do have our to-do list here. Of course, you have your journal, which most of you still have to do so far this week. That's focusing just a little bit on how you can bring those sources together in your paragraphs, making sure you get information from more than one source into each body paragraphs. You have to do your comments and reflections to finish out this week's discussion. Our quiz this week is all about MLA, so again, emphasizing even further those in-text and works cited citations. You have to have those to pass this assignment. And then you're going to review these materials and post your annotations for the second source, your advanced Google search source. Deb will take a look at those, and then she's also got some information to prepare you for your fall schedule, because the semester is almost over and you got to get signed up for fall. It's going to be too late soon, so I want to make sure you've all thought about what you're doing next. And I do encourage all of you to go ahead and take English 121 next semester, so it's fresh in your mind, all of the stuff you've learned this summer. And then she's got some information on learning community classes, which are an exciting opportunity as well. So she's got just a little assignment she wants you to do to make sure you've all planned your fall schedules, because the best way to ensure your success is to keep you rolling through your academic career. All right, well, as always, let me know if you have questions, but I'll look forward to reading your work over the weekend. Thank you.